Lois J. Wetzel, broadcasting live from Houston, Texas. Today I'm going to be talking with Summer Bacon, who channels the Dr. Peebles, who is someone who was a person here on the planet and is now coming through her, and she is a trance medium. So yes. How long have you been channeling Dr. Peebles?
Well, I've been channeling since 1994. I think that's about 17 years.
Mm-hmm.
And it was actually December 4th, 1994. I remember the day well. And but it was 7 years before that I actually self-trained in channeling. I just was looking for Dr. Peebles with my heart, and it took about 7 years of a lot of hard work to finally be able to surrender my body so that he could speak through me.
Yeah, that's got to be something that would take a lot of courage, Summer.
It does, and exactly. And the reason I did it is because I was so afraid of life, and I was so afraid of demons. And I was not raised in any sort of a evangelical Christian home or anything like that. My parents were very open to all religions. I wasn't someone that was taken to church every Sunday or anything. I had a lot of natural mystical tendencies since I was a little girl, and I saw spirits and heard them and felt them, and I had a lot of very profound experiences, even at the age of 9, of experiencing past lives where I literally went back into them, and I knew who I was and what happened, and I was trying to make sense of all of that because I felt different. You know, I felt very, very different than the rest of the world, and I could see air. That was kind of an interesting thing. And one of my friends laughed at me when I said, "Isn't it cool how you can see air?" And she said, "See air? What are you talking about?" I said, "You can see air, because air to me has substance. There's substance to air, and that's where I see the manifestation of spirit." So, as I got older, I was just so afraid of everything, and afraid of people, and afraid of the dark, because I would see things there. And I finally decided I had to face this once and for all, so I just forced myself to lay in the dark at night, and with all the doors closed, no nightlight on or anything, and face my fears, because I said, "God, if you're really loving, as everybody says you are, then I know I am safe. So whatever happens, it's up to you." And that's when I had visitations by a lot of very beautiful beings. I had tremendous out-of-body experiences. I had a visitation from Archangel Michael, and I didn't even know who he was. I'd never heard of him. And it was quite a remarkable thing, and it went on like that for so long, for about a year, that I finally realized, oh, hey, you know what? I'm not hurt. I'm not being attacked by demons. Things are getting kind of exciting. It's really fun to have those experiences, I have to say. To be spoken to by angels is a pretty cool thing. And then I decided, well, I'm going to see if I can find Dr. Peebles. And so I just looked into the darkness, and I said, I know you're there. I'm going on that premise. And I know that you're reaching out to me, but I have to reach out to you. So I have to complete the hug. So it took me a long time to do it before I actually saw him, and then to invite him to come into my body and to surrender my muscles, the control of my face, my vocal cords, and everything else was a very, very long process. But it's been worth it, because it's just been, it's just taken all the mystery out of life for me. It's just made sense of everything.
What do you say to the people who, listening to your story, say, "Oh, that's so cool, I wish I could do that," and think that it must be a lot of fun and exciting and makes you powerful? What do you say to those people?
Yeah, I would say
people think it's powerful.
Yeah, and it's not about power, and it's not about ego or, ooh, I'm the great Dr. Peebles channel, and it doesn't mean that I'm enlightened or anything. It just means that I was willing to surrender to the other perspectives and to allow life in instead of holding it at arm's length. So I would say to anybody who might want to attempt to do this enjoy the journey. It's just a journey. It's not about getting there. I know that I'm a really, really good channel. I'm very good at what I do. I've been doing it for a long time, and I've seen the evidence of that in what's happening in people's lives. But I will say to you that I am not, by my standards, the greatest channel that I could be. I think there's other levels. I think that I can surrender to foreign languages. I would love to be able to allow for Spirit to speak through me in any language they choose. That would really expand this work to so many other people, into other countries, and bring a whole new level to it. I've done that a little bit. I haven't mastered it yet, but I would love to be able to do it. I know it's just going to take more practice to surrender even more deeply to the other perspectives. So I would say enjoy the journey. Don't just sit there thinking that Spirit is going to jump into your body and suddenly start speaking through you. It just doesn't happen that way, and if it does, I'd be very, very cautious in proceeding from there, because this is a it's sort of like you don't become an Olympic gymnast overnight. It takes practice, and you want to refine that craft. And I think that's why sometimes there's, a lot of, people say, well, there's so many charlatans in this industry of mysticism, and I would say that part of that is just because there are people who don't understand the depth of this relationship that you're developing with Spirit and God. It's about you. It's not about becoming a channel. It's about you developing that relationship because you want it for yourself. And I've said it before, but I truly believe that what people get through me when Dr. Peebles speaks is the byproduct of what I've done for myself. I never wanted to be a channel. Not a public channel. I never had any intention whatsoever of doing this work professionally. And I did it solely because I wanted to have that connection with Dr. Peebles when my mentor, Thomas Jacobson, stopped channeling. And that was the only reason, and because I wanted to conquer my fears. I didn't want to be afraid anymore. Mm-hmm. And it's been remarkable because I was so shy in my life. And when I started channeling, I realized, oh no, Dr. Peebles needs an audience. Now I had to put myself out there in a way that most people don't have to do on a daily basis, because you don't know what's going to come through or what's going to be said. And in the early days, I was channeling dearly departed loved ones for people I didn't even know. So somebody might come to my house, and all of a sudden their husband would say they wanted to speak to their wife through me. It was scary. But but I did it. And that's where I found the proof of what I do as being something that's very legitimate. And God, what a freeing thing that has been for me, because there's not a question in my mind that God exists, that there's life after death. I mean, that in itself it just brings so much peace. It's just it's indescribable.
So when you say that, can we give a little more detail about that, in that when you would tell people or let the husband speak to his wife through you, then information would come through that there was no way you could know? Is that what you mean about it's affirming?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. For example, there was one time where a young lady, in her 20s, late 20s, maybe 28 years old, came to my house with her husband. And they sat down in front of me. I had I never knew anything about them until I saw them. I never wanted to know any background or why they wanted to come to see me. And so she's sitting there with her husband, and her husband's got his arms crossed, and he's very skeptical. And he said, I want you to know I don't believe in this stuff at all. I said, okay, that's fine. I said, I'm not here to prove anything. I said, let's just see what happens. And I said, as you know, I don't know anything about what's going to happen today. So back then, when I channeled dearly departed loved ones, Dr. Peebles would come through initially, and he would say, there's someone here who would like to speak to this young lady, and he would describe the person the way they looked. And as he was describing the spirit that was going to come through, I would feel that spirit come into my body. It was a process where, when I was in trance, I was much closer to the experience, almost like feeling like a puppet, like my body was definitely being possessed by a different spirit. This spirit, this man who came through, and let's call him Bob, came through to speak to his wife, I'll call her Karen, and this was what happened. Now, I said that Karen was there with her husband, which she was. I didn't know this was her second husband. I didn't know that her first husband had died, and I didn't know how he died. But when he came through me, I could feel the pain that he left with, and I knew he had drowned because he was not able to take a breath at first. And so when he finally came through me, he was gasping for air, and he said, "Whoo, I sure was down there a long time." And he started talking about how he drowned. He'd fallen off a boat in a lake when they were out on a lake. Well, not only that, but then he proceeds to tell his wife, he says, "Why aren't you sitting on the patio eating goldfish crackers and drinking lemonade like we used to? Now you drink Tang." And she just lost it, She said, "Because I can't drink lemonade anymore without you." It was just amazing.
Oh, that's sweet.
So the husband she came with, her second husband, he came back for a session, and he spoke to someone who was a friend of his. I didn't, again, know why he was there or who he wanted to talk to. And his friend came through, who was a very tall man, and this man had died from a drug overdose. And he came through and spoke to the husband and spoke about things that only the two of them knew about because they were buddies, and it was, so it kind of, I have hundreds of stories I could tell like that, but that's how I learned, it was the, you shall know them by their fruits kind of thing. Well, It was the real deal, and I could tell because you can't deny something like that.
Right.
It's honestly, I say it's either got to be really spirit speaking through me, or I'm a freaking genius. Really,
I mean, that.
How else would I know these things?
Yeah, it has to be spirit speaking, and I've had the same experience in, doing readings for people, and particularly past life readings, when things come through about them that I could not possibly have known, things they still do that got started in another lifetime. So that's the kind of confirmation I wanted you to talk about, so that people would understand, because there are so many charlatans out there, people who want to be powerful, and so they lump it. There are many people who lump everyone into that category, and it's just not right, because there are people who get confirmation from the client. When you said that people should be cautious about jumping right into channeling, would that be because there are certain beings that you wouldn't want to have come into your body? And how do you distinguish between the kinds of beings that it's okay to have come into your body? I'm talking about for the people who would like to try this, who think it would be fun to try this. And the kinds of beings that you don't want to allow to enter your body. Can you talk about that?
That's a hard one for me to answer, because I would tend to want to say there's not really anybody that you wouldn't want to have come in. As I discovered when I did the channeling of the dearly departed loved ones, I allowed for a man to come through who had was on death row and had been killed because he had killed somebody else. But he had a chance to speak to his friend and to talk about his life, and to speak about his his need for forgiveness and other things. And so I could have blocked that because I would have had judgment against him because he killed someone. But I didn't block it. I allowed for it to come through. So the problem is, just like in life, there are spirits who want to sabotage people, just like human beings like to sabotage other human beings. There are human beings who lie. There are spirits out of body who lie. So what happens is when you surrender to just anybody and anything and allow for it to come through, there can be a spirit that comes through posing as Dr. Peebles, trying to derail his good work in life. And I've seen it happen, and I'm not going to say where I've seen it happen, but I have seen this happen. I've had the fallout of it because I've had people come back to me and say, how could Dr. Peebles say this kind of thing? And I said, he wouldn't say that kind of thing. That's just simply not who Dr. Peebles is. Do you understand? You have to realize what he's all about is rooted in love, and that kind of comment that you heard was not rooted in love. So you need to use some discretion and some discernment here, and the ultimate purpose of this work is to increase the abundance of love on the earth in a person's life. That you really need to be able to see real goodness coming out of this. If somebody's channeling a spirit who's trying to manipulate or put thoughts into your head, this is how you feel and this is what you think, and won't let you banter back and forth about it. It's just you got to be really careful. But I'll say another thing about this. In the process of becoming a trance medium, it was about me being called on my stuff. I can't expect to channel somebody so beautiful as Dr. Peebles or Archangel Michael if I'm not willing to do the work on myself first. I have to be willing to channel my own voice with integrity before I can allow for Dr. Peebles to speak with integrity through me. I have to clear the pipe, so to speak, to allow a good, decent, clean flow of water to come through. So I'm constantly being called on my stuff. I'm constantly being torn down in some respects. If I mess up, I'm called on it real hard sometimes. But it's breaking me down so that I can be rebuilt closer to God and closer to Spirit, so that I can do this work in greater and greater integrity. So I don't know if that helps, but that's the way I see it.
It does. And I guess what I was getting at is I don't know if you agree that these that dark entities exist, and that if somebody doesn't know what they're doing, they might be vulnerable to something like that, which is why people need training before they attempt something like this.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, I agree.
I've seen people just jump straight into, I just realized that I'm this gifted medium and I'm just going to jump in and do it with no training, no background, and get into trouble.
Right.
So that was what I was trying to say.
Yeah, and I guess it just goes right hand in hand with, if they're not going to be discerning, they're just going to allow anybody to speak through, then they're going to find themselves in a bit of a mess there. Yeah. Channeling some entity that might not want to leave them alone, might be a spirit that just wants to wreak havoc in their life and the lives of others, and eventually they'll be experiencing the fallout from that. But it's I just think that I start with God.
Yeah.
I say, God, you're it. You're the one in charge. You've got my back here. I'm trusting, and I've gone so far as to say, if this is ever something that could possibly harm anyone, if there's anything that could come through that's not in integrity, I'd rather you just shoot me dead, because I don't want to be that kind of a messenger. I want to be one that's in integrity. And I can say, there are people who've judged me because I do make a living doing this. I discovered I had to eventually because, I was a graphic designer and I had children I was raising, and I was doing graphic design up to 16 hours a day for a very large human resources services company. And and I was channeling for free for people for 3 years. And when I got divorced, I ended up with nothing. Literally starting at square one. And I had children to support, and people kept saying, do this work. I said, no, I don't want to do it publicly. But I was backed into a financial corner, so I did it. It supported me and my children. I'm now 51 years old. My children are on their own. And I'm now looking at the work that Dr. Peebles has done through me and the teachings there, and I don't I'm not thinking about the money. I'm thinking about, I want to get these messages out to the world. I want to get his work out there. He's on Twitter now. Dr. Peebles tweets, and there's no ads or anything. It's just Dr. Peebles' words of wisdom going out to the public, just to encourage people. And I have people who are following Dr. Peebles who are in Istanbul and Ireland, and so it's pretty cool to get the good works out to the world. But you can't be motivated by the money. You can't be motivated by anything other than a desire to express God's love in the world.
Yeah. It seems to me that the most important thing that you've said is that the starting point is of your work and of the work I do and the people that I admire. The starting point is always that they have this overriding desire, and this is where they start from, to know more about God, or to know more about the deepest nature of reality, which ultimately is God, and then to make that their number one priority, to serve God and to do whatever that means, and then to follow that path and allow it to unfold. So wherever it happens to take the individual may not be at all visible from the start.
Right,
but
exactly.
It's that uncompromising desire to serve God.
Yeah, and it really is. I will say this, in this economy that we have, with all the fear that's in the world, all the wars and all the stuff that's going on, I'm not, just because I'm doing this work, I'm not immune to that. I lost my home. I filed bankruptcy. I had to start over completely, and both my children, left the nest on the very same day. I had so many devastating blows in my life all in 1 year. I thought, my gosh, how am I ever going to recover from this? But I've recovered from it because of my faith in God, because that's really the only point for me being here. I look at it like, I came to the earth because I want to show the world how much God loves them. That's what I want to do. I want to bring those messages to the world. That's what I'm doing. That's the way it is. When I was 4 years old, I was drawing pictures of and this is interesting because I wasn't raised in a Christian home. I was drawing pictures of baby Jesus in the manger with a billboard sign overhead that said, God is love. And that has been inside of me since the day I was born. And I look at this sometimes and I think, I'm just like anybody else. Why me? I miss my home. Why are my children gone already? And poor me. And I have my little pity parties and all that stuff. And then I stop and say, oh yeah, I forgot. I'm here to show the world that God loves us, no matter what, no matter where we are, what circumstances we're in. And it's just, that's all there is to me. That's it. It's what the journey's about. But it's really fun when you have this interaction with Spirit, because it doesn't matter where you are. You can be sitting at a boring movie at the theater, and if you're bored, you can always have a conversation with Spirit and kind of, do something else while you're waiting. It really does bring so much joy to my life. I used to love it when I saw Spirit more often, and I don't see Spirit as often as I used to, but I do see them. And it's a pretty awesome thing when I do. Occasionally I've had a number of dear friends who passed away in the last year, and I'm fortunate in that I can still maintain that relationship with them. They've come to visit me at my bedside. They deliver messages for their loved ones. It's just really makes things fun. So there's no separation anymore.
That's awesome, and I'm hoping that is something that people are going to be able to develop as we continue to expand, that more people will get it, at least to be able to hear their loved ones.
Yeah.
Or know when they see them in a dream that it's real. Because I think a lot of people see their loved ones after they've departed in a dream, but they don't accept that they were really there.
Yeah, exactly. And it's interesting because we don't have any. There's no real book. There's lots of books about becoming a mystic and how to be a channel and all that stuff, but there's nothing that really shows you what it's going to be about or that it's real. You have to go through the experience. So you need to begin with saying, I had a dream about my father last night, and he came to me in this dream, and it was so real. And I'm going to say, that's true too. It was real. I'm going to go on that premise, because if you don't accept that, you're not going to get to the next step. It's just like if you see somebody in the corner of your eye that walks past you. I have lots of clients who say, I always see these things in my peripheral vision. It looks like a person walking by. Well, trust that and say, aha, I saw you. Okay, can you come around to the front so I can see who you are, or can you tell me who you are? And I'll trust the first name that I hear. And you go based on that in little baby steps, trusting every little thing, and eventually you'll have the confirmation that you're seeking. All of a sudden, Spirit will say to you, you really need to turn left at this corner here instead of right. So you turn left and you realize they just saved your life. You would have been hit by another car. And you trusted it, and you realize there's proof here, there's evidence that these things that you hear, the things that you're seeing are real, but you've got to trust it. You've got to also have a lot of interaction with Spirit. You've got to talk to them. Use your voice. Speak aloud. Say, I see you. I hear you. If that's really you, I want the next car to be yellow. You can even do things like that, because you need to develop a dialogue with Spirit that is something that you can identify in your life. Every time you see a yellow car, it means this. Spirit will work with you like that through symbology, and you develop this language between each other, and it's really beautiful. And you'll learn to trust it over time. And I can say, if they're telling you to do something really bad, don't do it. Hello.
Discernment.
Exactly.
That word that you used before, that big word. Discernment, meaning use a little common sense judgment.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. So, but sometimes they tell you to do weird things like a radio show on the internet when you don't even listen to radio yourself, not hardly even in the car, except for music.
Oh,
that's one of the things they did to me.
Isn't that interesting?
I see 2 years after the fact, I now see why. I've got all these new friends.
Yeah.
All these connections that I would not otherwise have had with people all over the world. And but I continue to do what Spirit tells me to do, no matter how strange it is. I mean, I opened a metaphysical shop in my living room in a little house in a very population-dense area in Houston about 12, 13 years ago, and had it for about 7 years, and it grew like crazy, and wasn't very long before I had 2 separate locations, a home and a little house that was a shop. And again, my connections grew, and my client base grew, and the people that I could help grew, and the people who could help me. And so every time they tell me to do something weird and scary, I just kind of have to, gird up my loins with courage and get in there and do it. And
do it afraid, yeah.
Yeah, even though you don't think you can do it.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's, like you said, never anything bad. It's not anything that harm someone.
It's just scary because sometimes it runs counter to what we're taught is acceptable by society.
Well, yeah, like a physical shop in your living room, that's not acceptable.
Right, exactly.
But, yeah. Well, what are some of the things that you've done that were hard to do? And I'm hoping to help other people be courageous.
Oh, my gosh. Oh, I've done so many different things. I mean, channeling, of course, has been a big part of that. Leaving my abusive husband was a big part of that. Yeah, that was hard. But you know what? That was really interesting because that was so guided by Spirit. That was one of those things I was terrified, but I had nothing to go with except to trust the guidance I was getting from Spirit. I had one last episode of abuse one morning, and something inside of me rose up and said, no more. I'm done. And interestingly enough, that morning I had awakened, and I was fine. We were getting along great. Everything was good. I couldn't have seen this coming for anything. And I was in the kitchen. I was doing my dishes, and my grandmother came and stood at my side, and she was in spirit. And I said, Grandma, what are you doing? She said, go get your purse and keys and put them under the bed. And I'm like, go get my purse and keys and put them under the bed. Why? She said, just do it. And I said, oh, okay. I thought, well, Grandma was sort of like that. She liked things in a certain way. I'll honor Grandma and put my purse and keys under my bed. So I did it. My husband was still sleeping, left the room, and within about an hour, everything fell apart. And he was in a huge rage, and I was in very serious danger, and I knew I had to leave. So I just said, I agreed with everything he said, which was a lot of really vile stuff. And I walked back to my bedroom, and I got my purse and keys, and he didn't know it because he wasn't used to them being there. So he didn't even see it. He followed me back to the bedroom, didn't even see me doing this. And I walked past him, and I agreed with everything he said, and he followed me, pointing his finger at me and calling me all these names. And I said, I know, honey. You know what? I'll be right back. And I opened the front door, which never unlocked properly. The handle never worked. He had to jiggle it and do all kinds of stuff to get the door to open because he wouldn't fix it, and I didn't know how. And I turned it once. It clicked. I walked out. I got to my car. I locked the doors, and I sped off to my parents' house. So that was a very hard thing to do, but I had spirit with me in that as well. So it was pretty amazing. Jumping in terms of my work and doing this work publicly, that was the scariest thing I ever did. Really, to be able to go in front of a group of 100 people, and I don't know half of them, and I don't know who's going to be picked out of the hat. I don't know what Dr. Peebles is going to say. I mean, the thing tomorrow is called Life Without Limits. I speak on that subject myself for about 10 minutes, but Dr. Peebles comes through and he speaks too, and I don't know what he's going to say. So it's pretty interesting. You want to say hi to him?
Sure. We've got about 6 minutes left. We can say hi to him for a minute.
Okay. I'm going to put you on speakerphone, okay?
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, I'm going into trance. God bless you, Dr. Peebles. Here it is a joy and a blessing when man and spirit join together in search of the greater truths and awareness. God bless you indeed, dear Lois. You're a beautiful spirit. You have 6 minutes and then some, my dear. You've got centuries. You've got lifetimes. You have, my dear, eternity. My dear, you are always going to work very hard in getting messages out to the world, messages of love. It is your labor of love, my dear, to dissolve and diminish the illusions of separation within self and between life. And certainly, my dear, you're going to be working with some more controversial figures in the future, but you're going to be up for it, my dear. You can handle it because you're a beautiful spirit and you love so many people and you want to touch so many lives that you're willing now to allow the other perspectives to come in and to banter with them back and forth. God bless you indeed. For the listening audience here today, my dear friends, take good care of yourself. Be aware that life has seasons. And in each season, my dear friends, there is an opportunity for growth. Some seasons are seasons of dormancy. Some seasons, my dear friends, are seasons wherein you are bearing fruit. So be aware that there are seasons of your soul. And go your way in peace, love, and harmony, for life is indeed a joy. And all you have to do is you enjoy the journey to your own heart. God bless you indeed, and certainly to your own enlightenment. It's simply lighten up just a little bit more. God bless you indeed. Oh.
Hi, I'm back.
Well, that was very nice.
Was it?
I'm going to be working with more controversial figures.
Oh, okay.
And he
so
had
he
words
spoke to you again?
Yes, he did, briefly, and then to the listening audience. And, yeah, that was fun. I love him. I just feel
he's
that
pretty awesome.
Just this enormous, field of love kind of hits me in the heart. And I'm more of a see it and hear it kind of person. I don't feel energy that often, but I just always feel this love as I hear the words.
His energy is huge, absolutely huge. I'm right now. I'm just sweating when he comes through. It's just this incredible heat that comes through, and it's so beautiful. And a lot of times when people are sitting in his presence, they actually receive a lot of healing. I mean, I've seen miraculous things happen with him, where for some reason hearts oftentimes, which makes sense with Dr. Peebles, but are healed. And that's pretty amazing. I know people can feel it through the radio, too. I just know it.
I just did.
Yeah.
I just felt it through the radio.
He's accessible to anyone and everyone. You can just talk to him. And he's beautiful. He really is. And it's a privilege to be able to share that with the world. And I'm just so glad I had the opportunity to be on your show again. It's so much fun.
Me too. And again, over 2 years, this is the first time I've ever not called in on time. I am so embarrassed, and I do apologize. But it is such a delightful thing to be able to talk to you, because you have so much wisdom and so much experience, and I really feel a connection to you, because I can hear, and as you tell your story, that you had to stick your neck way out too, over and over and over again, and like I have, and it's you're sticking your neck out in a different way, but it's very comforting to know that there are other people who are asked to do things that feel so risky, and encouraging, I think, for other people who may listen. Because the last time I talked to Dr. Peebles spoke to me, he said that who I'm reaching are other seekers on the path all over the world, and that's my sense of it. I don't always know exactly who's listening, because if you're not signed up for Blog Talk Radio, then you don't show up as having been here. But every so often I'll get an email from someone in some far-flung part of the world saying, I listened to your show on such and such, and I really enjoyed it, and I had no idea they'd ever been here. And he said that the people who find me are guided to my show because they are also serious seekers on the path. So that right there is enough to keep me going indefinitely, because I know how important it is in listening to you, hearing that you have also had to really be courageous to keep on doing what you do. And I think that provides fuel for other people to stick their necks out.
It takes a lot of vulnerability to do this work. It takes a lot of vulnerability to do what you're doing. You're putting yourself in a position where you might not call in on your own show, And then what does the world think about that? Well, you know what? It's like, hey, you are human. That's what it shows people. You're an extraordinary person, and you're a human being too. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's no mistakes. There's no failure. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of the people who are listening in right now came to it late, because maybe their clocks were off too. A lot of times things are more in harmony than we even know. So,
so for whatever reason, but sticking your neck out, leaving it like I did, also leaving a marriage where you had it made in the shade where money was concerned. I mean, I did anyway. To go ahead and do the forbidden, which was follow the spiritual path, because that was not going to be allowed in my marriage.
Right.
And on and on and on.
Yeah.
But
you're a pioneer.
So are you. And to the rest of you out there who are thinking about sticking your neck out and doing something that's off the beaten path, I would say 2 roads diverged in a wood, and I took the road less traveled by, and that's made all the... Carl Sandburg, I believe, said that. And I think about that periodically. The difficult choices I've made have made my life so much richer, and I'll bet you could say the same thing.
Absolutely. I wouldn't change a thing.